welcome to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley. And wow, we got a fantastic show coming your way today. Got a very, 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 very good friend of mine, mentor. A lot of things. This man means a lot to me. It has taught me a lot, and just a man that's full of wisdom, understanding, and focus. And many times we find ourselves wondering that certain things that we need to do that we don't do. And, sometimes when we do get around to doing it, we find ourselves one step away from, other things that we probably should have thought about. But it's never too late. It's never too late, to get on the right path. So I tell you what, we're going to talk a little bit about one step away. But before I do anything, I have to bring my absolutely wonderful executive producer and co-host, Dr. Michelle Denise Cooley. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Happy Friday.
Yes, it is. It's kind of chilly here.
Oh, yes.
But it's still a great Friday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely chilly.
How's your day going so far?
It's going great. Like I was telling you before, I just was at the gym and just playing with the cutest little puppy German Shepherd one the trainers had. So my day is going great.
Wow. So we got a great show today, Michelle. And we got this great guest and great friend of mine. And hopefully I get a chance to see him. I'm in California tomorrow, so I'll be there for about 5 or 6 days. So hopefully we'll get a chance to hook up for lunch or something. But I tell you what, let's get this show started. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners the title of the show, purpose of the show, and introduce this great guest to our viewers?
Oh, most definitely. So the title of the show is One Step Away. And we're going to have a conversation with entrepreneur, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, Frank Westall. And we're going to talk about, things that are going on in his life. He's going to discuss his cancer journey and starting and maintaining businesses in this current technological environment. And we're going to talk about stress counseling. So let's talk a little bit about Frank, who's been a previous guest on the show. He was born in Okinawa, Japan, and was basically a military brat. His dad was a Southern boy from North Carolina, who joined the Merchant Marines at age 15. At age of 17, his dad joined the Army, where he met Frank's mother, Elizabeth, where he was stationed in the Philippines. And at that time, Frank's mother was a single mom raising a son and with the support of her family. Frank's dad married his mother and committed to raising her son on his own. His parents eventually grew. Their family had 3 more kids, including Frank's. He had a hearing-impaired sister. In the early 60s, his parents were what today is considered a modern family. They came from different cultural backgrounds. His mother had a son from a previous marriage. They had a daughter with a disability, and they both had very successful careers. With no formal education, Frank began his entrepreneurial career in the tech industry long before the booming industry we know today. In '96, he forged the path for the virtual reality gaming, multiplayer gaming software as a service, and founded the parent company that purchased and grew the original social media platform, MySpace. Frank's creative passions did not stop there at one industry. His love for food, his fellowship led him to open several restaurants, master BBQ and marinade creations, and establish and grow a family-run catering business. His love of food is only outmatched by his love of competitive strength sports. His lifelong pursuit of physical strength has been tested on national and global powerlifting stages. Frank has done it all with the support of his wife of 37 years, Dorothy, his 5 children, 7 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. Welcome back to the show, Frank Westall.
How you doing, Frank? Welcome back.
I'm good, JC. The person you talked about with wisdom and stuff, they couldn't show up, so I'm here instead. I'm good. Thank you.
Hey, man, I miss you, man. It's been a while since
hope to see you this week here.
Oh, we're gonna make it happen. We got to make it happen, man. So it's nice having you back on this show.
Thank you.
Can you tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit more about Frank and some of the things that you're doing?
Not. Michelle filled in pretty well. I am. I guess I'm an entrepreneurial I'm an entrepreneurial serial guy. I mean, I just like to start businesses. And my family is, very well educated. I'm the only dumb one. My mom had her PhD and two masters. There's masters in my family, almost all of them. And I could not quite focus on school. It was difficult for me. My father said, boy, if you're going to keep doing this, you're going to be a ditch digger. I didn't know that ditch diggers for the railroad made $40 an hour. I would have switched to that rather than trying to start my own businesses. But maybe I was too, I was not, the word might not be dumb, but, I didn't not, or naive. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to start these types of business, especially in the tech industry, without having the appropriate education and experience. But that's what I did because I just found that of interest. I'm not a technical guy. I mean, over the years I've become technical, but when I started, I wasn't technical in it. I just looked at this was a real interesting opportunity. In fact, Elon Musk wrote when he was younger, he read a lot of science fiction, read comic books, and that was just his way of escaping. I did the same thing. In fact, I remember I skipped school in 5th grade for 3 weeks because I would hide in my room, in my closet, and I would read all these books from anywhere from Stephen King to Robert Heinlein, and I was 10 years old. And so that kind of set my path on looking at stuff that was beyond me. So, I started the businesses, and I started multiple businesses as time went on. Some of them successful, some of them not. And during that path, I had a series of, I don't want to say obstacles, but a series of challenges. And that along with my family and the traveling set how I approach things, I think. And, you have some very successful guests, and I feel a little bit intimidated. On the other hand, I recognize that what I've contributed might not be so much in the academic world, but in creating other people in helping to mentor and create other businesses. I've been able to help other people to a certain degree. Now, I didn't think that way when I was younger. I just thought of starting a business, making money. But as I got older, priorities change, and especially when you hit these potholes in the road. So there's a story about Andrew Bourdain. That's the reason for the name of the show, One Step Away. He was, I paraphrasing it, but he was living in his mom's place. He was sleeping in the basement. He did short order cook. He didn't really have a job. He was in the 40s, and he was kind of at the end of his rope as to what to do. He would write little articles about what went on in the kitchen to send to his friends that were also cooks. It would be kind of funny. And his mom said, who's obviously older, said, give it to me, son. I'll go give it to one of my magazine friends. And at first he didn't pay attention. She kept asking him. He finally said, okay, thinking that it would be a daily, New York Post or whatever it is that was the daily back then. He gets a call about 4 weeks later, but he took that one step to give it to her. And he gets a call about 4 weeks later, and I think it was from the New Yorker or something to that effect. And he goes, oh, you want to run my article? And they go, well, yes, but we also want you to write a column every month, which is what launched his career. Unfortunately, he passed away. But, that's that kind of not giving up, and looking at doors that might open, even if it's your mother, to see what you can do. Now, I want you to make that step, whether that step is opening up a door for financial opportunity, or whether that step is overcoming some disability or an illness or, a family tragedy. It's taking that step. And other people would say, they put their heads down and they kind of plod forward. I listened and met both the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul and the two founders of Federal Express. This is decades ago. And the FedEx guy said, you have to fail 8 times before you succeed and keep that success. And their attitude is that, people that start opportunities or businesses and they have a passion for what they're doing, they're very laser beam focused, and they never think of a failure as a failure. They just think it's part of the process for them. And that's why entrepreneurs, which means to enter in new, do what they do, especially in today's world where it's very difficult to move into the tech space. Actually, almost everything has tech space. I don't care if you work at a McDonald's, they have machines that are AI focused that purportedly are to take the place of the person, but that's not really there yet. So it's, you have to have somebody like yourself. Look, JC, I mean, come on. When I first met you and first saw you, you were giving away the small stepping stone scholarships for the high school kids. And I, my son was a beneficiary of that. And I thought that was very cool. And I talked to you and I thought, oh, here's a good old boy. Here's just this guy from the South. He's just a nice guy starting. And I go to your house and I see all of the awards that you've received. No, you don't get the awards because they just want to give them to you. You do something that is in your passion, in your wheelhouse, and then other people see that and they want to thank you for those types of things. And then I saw your academic and your wife who's brilliant, and I thought, okay, it's kind of like Columbo. I don't know if you ever saw that Columbo show. You go, and he pretended he didn't know, but the whole time he understood, and he would throw people off. And that's kind of the way you are. Although you don't know that, your passion and your focus, laser beam focused in helping culturally, societal, in individuals. I mean, that's the other thing is at the end of the day, both of you focus on individuals, because you can say we're going to help a group of people, but if you don't have a personal relationship with people within that area, it doesn't, you really can't have that empathy. So from my perspective, as time went on, I went through several things, and it kind of molded me. My wife says I am absolutely not the same person I was 15 years ago. And I said, yeah, because I had hair then, I wasn't old yet. She goes, no. She goes, your attitude and the way you present yourself. She said, you still talk too much, but you're a different person. And that has to do with all the things that, help to create this new character. The body recycles its entire cell, everything in the body.
Hey, Frank, can you hold that thought? We got to take a station break, but we're going to come back. If you want to be part of this conversation, regardless of where you're watching it at, E360 TV, YouTube, LinkedIn, Stream, any other over 25 streaming network, all you have to do is just go to your comments and ask this great man in the show you want to. We'll be back shortly after the break.
I'm right where I wanna be. We got something you and me, and I can't get rid of this feeling. Just like a magnet, we're just like a magnet. The things we have can't be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Just like a magnet, we're just like the magnet. The things we have can't be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Hey, I'm so drawn to you. I'm so drawn to you.
We are not a charity. We are veterans. We are warriors, brothers, and sisters. We don't need, we deliver. Opsforvets.com. Handshakes, not handouts.
I'm Albert Rencheria, Marine Chief Warrant Officer 4 retired, Ops for Vets CEO. I invite you to take a look at our organization. You'll quickly understand why out of thousands of groups currently serving our veterans, we have become the most rapidly growing and opportunity-rich team in the market. We have deployed dynamic distributors who are responsible for servicing and growing their regions, East, Central, and West. We provide a complete roster of high-caliber services, produced to create the results you require. Find us on the web at www.opsforvets.com. Handshakes, not handouts.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life. I got my very, very good friend here, Frank Westall. And one of the things I'm going to have to correct, he's not smart. This is one of the most brilliant individuals that I know. So don't be fooled. He is one of the most intelligent individuals I know. And I tell you, a mentor of mine. And just so happy to call him friend. And just a man with a heart of gold that's always reaching out to help others. So I tell you what, if you want to be part of this conversation, all you have to do is go to the comments and ask this great man any question you want to. Frank, now you grew up in your father was in the military, traveling around, and you had mentioned something about you grew up in a mixed family. And how did that affect you? Growing up in mixed family, traveling around the world, and how did that shape you into being the person that you are today?
When you're a kid, you hate it because you're changing schools anywhere from 2 to 4 years. I think I went through 6 elementary schools, and my parents would put me in a civilian school. So if we were based in Fort Benning, Georgia, I'd go to civilian school, and those kids would know each other from when they first got into school. So it was from my perspective, it was very difficult. The other side is we lived in Georgia, Kansas, Virginia, and nobody knew what a Filipino was. So they called me other names, and I would, what am I going to say? I don't know what those. I don't know what you call a Filipino. They were derogatory and bullied a lot. It didn't help. My mom put me in ballet and piano. That was then. I hated it, but it completely formed me because when you go from school to school, you need to adjust very quickly. And we ended up, I was born in Okinawa. We left when I was a year old. We went back when I was 12 and I stayed there throughout high school. And that school, even though it was a Department of Defense school, it was a large school at the time, at 3,000 to 4,000 kids. And in sports, they had 4 football teams, 4 JV teams. And so it's such a large school, but it was Army, Navy, Marine, and Air Force. And so you'd have these rivalries. So that kind of set your pattern. And the other side of it is the military was really the first to integrate. Okay. So when I looked around at my friends, they were all mixed. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them were. And so you didn't see the things that you saw when I was in Georgia, when I was a kid. The fountains still said whites only, blacks only. And at the time you didn't understand it until you started being called names and that kind of thing. So when it was in the military schools, everybody was the same. It was kind of an average scenario. That's why my high school in Japan, we keep, there's thousands of us keep in touch because that is our home, so to speak, from where we're from. So it did set me up. So when I turned around and I started moving back, we came back to the mainland of the US, and I started trying to figure out what I was going to do. I just adjusted as quickly as I could without even thinking about it. As far as race goes, social media makes things much, much more than they are, both in the good and the bad. And so from my perspective, I didn't even think, I wasn't supposed to start this business, or I wasn't supposed to go out with this individual. My entire family is extremely mixed. Hawaiian, African American, Chinese, Filipino, Scottish, English, Italian, and French. I mean, it's a huge mix. You can imagine with 7 grandchildren, a great grandchild, and 4 daughters who really tell me, why their life is miserable because it's you, Dad, which, they obviously love me, I hope. So yeah, no, that's kind of, it's in kids that are in Department of Defense schools tend to be higher achievers. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw it statistically somewhere. Like we go to a reunion and it'll be 10 years before a graduating class and 10 years after. And I found, friends of mine that were, one of the divisions of the CIA was director, and like, this guy, I knew him in high school. I can't believe he's the director. And there's guys that were colonels and generals and gals too, and all high achievers, scientists. And then there was me. What are you doing, Frank? I'm just trying to start this little game company or whatever it might be. But yeah, it set my entrepreneurial mentality because you have to adjust so quickly. You accept all cultures because you live in different cultures. It's pretty amazing because the people that have lived in the U.S. all their lives, although it's a little mitigated because they see stuff real time on online. But when you live in other countries where your sewage is what's called a benjo ditch, which is the sewage is outside in a ditch and it's just covered with cement, and the people you're talking to, you go into their store and their store is a hard packed dirt floor, your life is, you just recognize you just have it so much better. Or even if you go into, not third world countries and you look at the way they act kind of they were homogenistic, like one way of thinking. And you realize that, with this country, there's 186 nationalities, the great melting pot, the great experiment. It shows why there's so much technology, creativity, things that are coming out of this country. And as bad as it is, supposedly it is in certain areas, it needs to change. It is, I've been around the world. It's 10 times better than other places, and I think it's Switzerland and Sweden. It's against the law to make more than $250,000 a year, against the law. So these big companies, they move outside of their country and use the companies outside. And yeah, if you can't have innovation, if you're kind of stifling it down, it changes the culture and the society you're in. And, it just changed the way I thought. And I didn't think I changed. That's just how I ended up being. So in trying to go to college, which I think I had 128 units, which only 22 were credited for. And I just kept thinking, I'm here and I need to work on my business. I need to work on this, work on that. So at the time, there's no internet. So my first company, I think name was Lt.Col. He had a commercial that said it was the razor blade. He goes, I love this razor, was so good, I bought the company. Victor Cayenne was his name. And he was a raider back in the 80s, and he would buy a company with its assets and he would sell the assets off. So leverage buyout. So I saw the commercial, did a little studying, and the company I worked for, this was my first company, was a software company that before PCs, and their minis and micros, that type of thing was around, and it had a financial package called Winning on Wall Street and another software package. And they closed down, and I went to bankruptcy court, and I did a leverage buyout utilizing the assets of the company to pay for that company. And that's what kind of got me started. I had 1,000 packages of software around me I had to sell. But yeah, that's how I got started in that stuff. And I had to read up on technology. And then right after that, the IBM PC was introduced. And one of the guys on the division started another company I worked for, Mr. Brown, and he said they built 20,000 PCs thinking that was going to be the end of their life cycle, not knowing it would explode the way it has done over the decades. So, I kind of this serial entrepreneur, along with I love mentoring, especially as I'm older. It's much, there's a greater benefit because financial or material issues are, it's just one off. They're just there and it's nice and gone. But when you mentor, you see people that can succeed and they grow and they help other people or employ other people. And that is, at the end of the day, you got your faith, your family, and how you've treated other people. And that's kind of how I've changed over the years, I think.
Wow,
Oh,
that's Frank. I know you said you love mentoring other people. Do you have mentors in your life right now? At least at the time when you first started your business and
yes, I,
entrepreneurship, did you have mentors?
actually, I tell people they should always, in life, they should have mentors, at least one or two. And mentoring isn't something where you go up to somebody, you say, hey, can you mentor me? That person might not want to mentor it. You have to put it out there and pray and hope that, in a lot of ways for me, God put somebody in front of you. And it's like your friends. You always want to have somebody in there with greater wisdom. Uh, you know, you want them to be able to challenge you. And I ended up having the mentor, his name's Gordon. He was my business rival. We both had a software company. He was out of Chicago. I was on the West Coast. My software company was just gangbusters. It was doing $1 million a month, and his was barely sliding by. But he's like both of you folks. He's laser focused. He merged his company with another company on the West Coast. He came out, and in the interim, my company turned around, and it due to different things in the environment, it collapsed. And that was, by the way, my first experience with the litigation lawyers. I wish it had been my last, but that they use it as a business tool. So I turned around and he called me up one day. He said, "What are you doing, Frank?" And I thought he was going to call me up to gloat. No, he didn't. And I didn't even have enough to make payroll. He goes, "You want to consult with me?" I said, "Yeah." So he goes, "How much do you want to charge?" And I said, $25,000. I mean, come on. And he goes, "Okay." And he really didn't have it. He sent it to me and it got me by for a few more weeks with my staff. And I was able to adjust towards, and we've been friends from that point forward. But where I kind of stayed within startups, he grew within the corporations, and his company became, he's part of very successful companies. And the entire time, he's always kept in touch with me, good, bad, or indifferent. And then as years have gone by, he's gone from being a business mentor to a spiritual mentor because he has a strong personal faith. And, I always tell people around me, I said, I'm constantly falling on my face. And so what God has done is put 2 or 3 pastors around me as friends to help pick me up. And I am the furthest example of somebody should follow what Frank does because he walks Christ's path. I'm like that little kid that'll step on the curb, step off the curb. And I just hope and pray that I'm not lukewarm in Christ's mouth. I don't want to spit me out. But yeah, that was one mentor. Another mentor is a man I went to since I was 12 years old. We were friends, and he's super intelligent. Full scholarship to West Point. He goes into the military and gets his master's and a PhD in biomechanical engineering, and he helped invent the subdermal superglue. So if you're a vet and you get a chest wound out in the desert, they can't close it up inside. So the super glue dries inside, and then afterwards, this was 30 years ago, it comes apart after so many hours. So they get enough time to get him to the hospital. And he also invented the crash cart that goes on. Well, he and 3 docs that go underneath the unit and carry the person in. And that was done 30 something years ago, which basically the ICU is extremely intelligent. I used to try to cheat off of him in school, and he would cover up the paper. And he said, "Man, if you spent more time studying," I said, "You're my best friend." He goes, "If you spent more time studying than you did in trying to cheat, you wouldn't have any problems." So as time went on, we got back in touch, and he ended up being a captain or major, whatever, in the Army, and on the research side. And he left to the civilian side, but still kept doing his work. I just actually got off the phone with him for about an hour. He's head of first responders for the state of Florida. He's the CEO. He's not, he doesn't describe himself as a medical technology guy, but a technologist. So when I was going through all my heart issues and my cancer, I had no problem calling him up, and he'd send me 20 different research pages from different things because he has access to that info. And, kind of walked me through my different situations and talked to me about it. And so that was my second mentor. And
Hey, Frank, why don't you hold that thought? We're going to pick it up when we get back. We got to take a station break, but we're going to take a station break. If you want to be part of this great conversation, all you do is go to the comments, ask this great man any question you want to. It's your life. We'll be back shortly after the break.
Life is a series of circles and cycles, crazes and stages. These experiences teach you the lessons of life. You can either ignore them or embrace them. Welcome to It's Your Life with James Cooley. James is a motivational speaker, author, military veteran, and founder of the J.C. Cooley Foundation. James is here to equip you to strive for greatness and overcome adversity. It's time to get you equipped today for the challenges of tomorrow. Now, here's the host of It's Your Life, James Cooley.
It's your life.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I tell you, Frank is, he's putting it down. A man full of inspiration and paints a picture where you feel like you were there. So I mean, I thought I was there when he was explaining all of these things, especially about his mentors. But Frank, you mentioned something, and you brought it up about when you was going through challenges, your cancer, and all that. I want to pick it up with that.
Yeah. So, I always had a heart condition, but that didn't stop me. I didn't know what it was. Eventually, they said it was prolapsed mitral valve, which I still didn't know what that was. And I remember my father, before he retired, he was the head, whatever they call it, commander of the recruiting group for the West Coast. And they would call me at home, and, after I was in high school, and try to recruit. My dad got on the phone and made sure he read the riot act to them. He hung up the phone. He said, "Boy, you are not military material." And it was, I didn't want to necessarily join the military, but it was pretty devastating to hear that. And then find out my younger sister, 6 years, ended up going into the Army. I found out later the reason why is because I had this heart condition. And so fast forward, I turned around, and it progressively got worse. And it's so slow, insidious, you don't know, you're just tired. And I was doing, I did martial arts for 13 years, and I was in a competition, and state competition, and I was younger. I was 30 something. And I would fight for a minute, and I just had to lean over, and I couldn't breathe. And we ended up going to a computer show in France, and with my wife, and I'd walk about half a mile and I had to stop. Fast forward a little bit later, we're back in the US. I'm going to my second oldest daughter's graduation. She's going to be the keynote speaker, and I start walking, and nobody's with me. I kept walking, then walking back to the house, walking out. My head was a little bit, and then my heart started racing so fast, and I had to crawl up the stairs. I mean, up the sidewalk to the door. My eldest daughter was watching all the younger kids, and I said, I'm going to put my feet on the stairs and I'm going to go to sleep. And so I put my feet on the stairs and just went into it. I felt warm and I went to sleep. Next thing I hear, Mr. Westall, Mr. Westall. And it was paramedics that were there. And apparently my nephew had watched too much ER and kept pounding on my chest, and that restarted the heart. Luckily, we found out later my valve was 90% calcified, aortic valve, which means if he had hit it the wrong way, it would have flaked off and I would have had a stroke. But as it was, when I got to the hospital, I had defecated. I looked like Darth Maul, which in Star Wars, I had blood vessels broken all over my face, all over my eyes. And basically the guy goes, hey, looks like you died for a minute. I said, what? And he goes, you let loose of everything and everything was gone. And he goes, that's an indication. So basically they had to keep me there. And within 3 days, they did open heart surgery, which they cracked my chest open and replaced the aortic valve, not the prolapse valve. They were going to put a mechanical valve in me, but I called my friend, Dr. Linden, who's been my friend forever, and he said, don't do that. Just put in like a cow valve or something to that effect, and it'll last 15 years. And as technology goes, Frank, for every year computers advance, medical technology advances 7 years. So I did that. And not knowing what happened for 3 years after, I was in complete depression. And I didn't even know it was depression. And I would call my friend, Dr. Linden, and he said, he was military and he'd been in the field. He said, you have what was like called a sucking chest wound. And I said, what does that mean? He goes, you were unconscious, but your body knows it's had this massive damage to it. So it releases all these chemicals that affect you in a negative way, cortisone, that kind of thing. So had to get over that. That was the first time. And you want me to keep going to the second?
Yeah, keep going.
So fast forward about 10 years, I recovered. I went back into business. I was doing the business stuff. I told myself I was going to change. I said, I'm going to change. But it's like habits. Habits, once they're started, are very difficult to break. And so what happened was I had surgery on my shoulder. Unfortunately, at that time, there's something going on sterilizing the surgical tools. They had it at UCLA too, where they didn't get sterilized properly. And I didn't know this. And I ended up having a bacterial infection. They tried to get me to take regular antibacterials. It didn't work. I ended up being in the hospital for 2 weeks, literally almost died. And because they couldn't control it, they got it into control. But, I had 3.5 months. I had to be at home with full bacterial injections through a pouch I had to carry. And I had to do an IV injection every 12 hours. I wanted to die then because it was so horrific, because you're killing all the good bacteria and bad bacteria. And I think we're made up of 40% bacteria. So I finally recovered from that. But then 4 weeks later, they said, it's all clear, but we're going to need to open your chest up again because your valve is not alive. And some pieces of that bacteria can attach to it. And once it attaches, it comes back. So I was at Scripps. The first time was at Kaiser in LA, which was, the doctors were amazing. They did 300 surgeries a year, the two doctors, open heart surgery. So Scripps, I went to Scripps, and so I went into Scripps, and the doctor, after the surgery, it's supposed to last 6 hours. I was in there 11 hours. My wife kept asking, what's going on? What's going on? No, it's fine. It's fine. And they put me into the ICU afterwards. And about a week later, the doctors didn't tell me any of this, but the physician's aide just kind of said it without thinking. She goes, oh yeah, the heart pump machine broke. And the hose that holds the water that keeps the pump going, isn't clean water. It's just regular water. And it started spraying all over got under the doctors, started spraying all over the surgical. And they had to empty themselves out. They had to keep my chest open for 3 hours while they cleaned everything up. I didn't care afterwards, it just, I woke up with my shoulder feeling like it was pulled out of the socket, and it was because it had pulled out that whole time. And the surgeon came back. So I didn't think about suing. I just didn't care. So the surgeon came back and he goes, yeah, and he was like 6'2", he's a mountain biker. He goes, I had to sit on your chest instead of using the saw. You had to use a hammer and chisel because I'd already had one and the bones had thickened. So that was the second time, and my depression didn't last that long, simply because I understood what was happening, and so I was able to recover, after a year from that. All that time I was working, and keep maybe not working as much, but trying to keep my head above water and keep the businesses going, because they were relatively easy for me. So that kind of, again, you think, oh, you're gonna change, Frank, after the bacterial infection, after the second open heart surgery, you're gonna walk a different path. I didn't think that way that time, but I thought, okay, how does this change work? And my wife said it just started happening with you. You had more patience. You weren't as arrogant. You're still arrogant, but you weren't as arrogant. You didn't fly off the handle at things. You didn't try to micromanage everything. And slowly over the years that changed. And then 10 years after, so I was 59, this gets into the cancer. My doc wanted me to come in and see.
Hey Frank, why don't you hold that thought right there? Because we're gonna take a break because I really want you to talk about that one. So
you got it.
We're going to take a station break, but we're going to come back and continue to hear this great man tell us about a lot of things, and also want everybody to pay attention. We'll be back shortly after the break. It's Your Life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cool.
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, or hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? In everything that you do.
Noah Dingley here, producer of The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And the new audio version of James' book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, is a must-have. James shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. Get the new audio version of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James Cooley on Amazon.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's Your Life, and I got my good friend here, Frank Westall, and he is telling us about some of the things that he went through, some of the challenges, and perseverance because he's still with us. And he's going to tell us about his journey with cancer, and I just love old man crushing cancer, his journey.
What is it? Where is it here? Old man lifting cancer. There we go.
Oh yeah. So Frank, can you start? And this is exciting.
So what had happened was, fast forward till I was 59 years old. I'm 67 now, and it kind of was my character. I procrastinated in high school. I just would wait to the last minute, except for things that I was really interested in. Then I would laser focus on it. And I had the heart issue, so my doctor kept calling and saying, "Need to have you in, Frank. I need to check it." And he's just an amazing doctor. I went through the script system, and it's just incredible. He kept calling like 4 times, 5 times, and finally he had to call my wife. Said, "I just need Frank to come in so I can check him out." He wasn't even the cardiologist; he's just the general. So I went in, and he said, he was talking to me for about 5 minutes, and he said, I need you to go down to emergency at Scripps down. It was like 10 minutes away. And my wife goes, "Oh, why? What's wrong?" He said, "Nothing. You just need him to get the x-ray down there." I said, "And don't let Frank stop by to get a Subway sandwich. Just go straight there." She goes, "Should we get an ambulance?" He goes, "No, it's faster. You just go. Not a big deal. Just go." So I go, and I'm walking in the front door, and this is at the beach. And I mean, it's incredible sunny day, Wednesday afternoon, 2:00. Nobody in the emergency. The front desk lady, as I'm even walking door, "You're Frank Westall?" I said, "Yeah." Go into the ER, and they'll wait for you there. There's one person in 12 beds. And so I sat down, and he goes, "Okay, we took your blood. You look fine. Everything sounds fine. We're going to send you to get an x-ray." And I said, "I can walk." He goes, "No." And I'd sent my wife to get some Subway sandwich. And so I go down there, and as I'm coming back, I go, "Oh, I feel something, like something's going through my back, like a knife." And I started doing breathing exercises that I learned with my wife when she was pregnant. Hee ha ha, trying to stop it. And they gave me a nitroglycerin, and they had to give me 2 to dim down the pain. And I texted my wife to come back. She said when she came back, there was like 20 doctors, nurses, everybody in there, since I was the only person. Within half an hour or 45 minutes, they had put what's called a stent into me, and they stopped it. It was a week later, I'm sitting there in the hospital, and they go, "Oh, look at," the nurse said, "Oh, this is the old EKG, and look, this is what's called this circle, like a tombstone." I said, "Oh, okay, what does that mean?" She goes, "You had what's called a widowmaker." And I said, "What's that?" She goes, 90% of the people, 95, die from it because they can't get to somebody fast enough. Just so happened my doctor knew, and he had sent me down there without getting my wife unduly worried, or making sure I got down there. So that it's probably more of an example of God being there constantly for me for every one of these issues. A lot of it has to do with you might not, I might not have as much faith in Christ as I want to, but God has faith in all of us, in his kids, and he blesses all of us. It's just, what do you do with that blessing? So now they wanted me to run. I weighed 264 pounds, and I said, "Yeah, let me just start lifting weights," which I'd done when I was younger. And then I was on social media because that was my background, and I start little groups up, and I write articles on people that would use weightlifting to overcome. There's a lot of females, because they are not like men. They don't lift weights for the ego. They just like to be empowered. And so then I started competing and in master's group, and started doing well at it, and working nationals. And so now I think I'm all that in a bag of chips. Although my character has lessened as far as the overbearing side. I then turned around, and my doctor started calling me at 55, and then at he's 50, and then 55, and then 60, then 65, to come in and just get colon checked, just get it checked. And I don't want to be invaded like that. And it was very much my ego, very much my procrastination, very much I'm lifting these giant weights and world championships, and therefore I'm fine. And finally he said, "There's something that's called Cologuard, which is a box, Frank, and we just send it to your house, and then you give the samples, and you send it back." And so I got it, and he goes, "But you have to send it back in 24 hours. I got it, put it in, and I waited 2 days. So I sent it back, and they said, "No, it's no good." So my wife had to make sure that I got it. I put it in, I sent the samples in, and she made sure it got back right away. And he said, "There's a 70, 80% chance it shows it, but this Cologuard is not 100% proof. So you just need to go check. So my brother-in-law had been living with us and his wife and his 2 kids for a number of years because he had multiple myeloma, which is a form of cancer, had it for 18 years. And in the last 3 years, they came to live with us because he couldn't do anything. He had half a good day out of two weeks. But he was a very strong young man, very intelligent. And, you know, towards the end, we put a bed in the living room so he didn't have to come up the stairs. And it's my wife's, you know, sibling, but her brother, closest age to her to everyone else. So she's very much loved him. And he passed away in the day with his family around him. So then I go to this is 2 weeks later, I go into the oncologist and he does the check. And within 15 minutes, he comes out and goes, "You have cancer." Just like that. No, oh yeah, I just need to tell you. From my perspective, my comment back was, I didn't even think of it. I said, well, this is interesting. My wife just fell apart because she'd just seen her brother pass away from a long-term effect of a form of cancer. So they had me go to the surgeon. The surgeon said, okay, it's probably stage 3. We're checking you. I can operate on you, and that'll be fine. Then they did it. My wife insisted they did do more than an MRI. She goes, is there another test that can look at the whole body? Because MRI only measures. I said, well, the PET scan, and because it only shows energy activity over the body. It doesn't show where cancer is, but it's just high levels of energy. But with that, they realized I had what's called stage 4 metastasized cancer, which only, there's only, 80% of people die within a couple of months of that. So I couldn't do surgery. They said they can do chemo on me, and the chemotherapy would hopefully maintain it, from there. I called my friend, Dr. Charles Linden, and I said, this is what I've got. This is what's happening. He goes, you've got Scripps, one of the top research and medical hospitals in the country. You're in good hands. You've got a team of doctors. So when I went to my chemo doctor, I said, this is going to be an interesting journey, only because of all the other things I'd gone through. So instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I have cancer, I thought, oh, I got cancer. Okay, well, let's see what happens here. By that time, I knew I was not immortal. By that time, I saw my mortality ending within the period of time. So the problem was, if I had gotten in even in 65 instead of 66, the cancer would have been stopped. So now I'm at this point where they don't want to say you're at end of life, but all the research I did said that was the case. And I turned around, and what happened was I started the chemo, went fast forward 7 months, I couldn't handle anymore. It's twice a month, along with carrying chemo at home. And my heart was getting affected, so they stopped it. And that was the end of that. I couldn't do anymore. So I said, what happens now? They said, we're going to let you rest up. And they did a PET scan 2 months later and saw the metastasized was gone. And I said, what about the regular cancer down in the colon? He said, it's a lot of activity there. But that allowed me to go to radiation. And radiation allowed me to go to surgery. But prior to that, rather than just feeling like I was out of control of everything, I said, what can I? And my friend said, you got to do something that takes control of your life while you're doing this. So I started taping going to the chemo doctor, telling him what I was going through, trying to get people to go in and get checked. Don't do what I did. Don't wait. Women should get checked at 40. Men should get checked at 40. It's just, it's so easy to cure. Don't let yourself die based upon being a procrastinator. And
Frank,
so
we're down to the last minute of the show. Can you please?
So what ends up going forward, I went into surgery. They came out, and the doctor that did the surgeon was amazing. She said, I didn't have to put a bag on you. Your cancer's gone down there. Then I was, okay, that's great. I went back to the chemo doctor, and he started looking at the document. This is Scripps. It's not Catholic school, hospital or anything. He's looking at it and goes, wow, this is incredible. This doesn't happen. I'm like, what? My wife's with me. He goes, I call this a mini miracle. Then he walked over, he goes, no, I call this a miracle. Nobody goes through what you do and is cancer-free afterwards. It just doesn't happen. So I had over 300 people write prayers for me on social media. So I knew that the power of God. In fact, the surgeon told me when she closed the door, when I was complimenting, she said, these hands, I can do the test. These hands over here, God does the rest. And that's how she thought on everything she did. So that has really impacted my life. And that's where it's got to me.
Wow.
To this moment.
Hey, Frank, we got to have you back on, man, because we got so much more that we got to talk about. And this is so interesting. So I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show, Rick. Let's try to get you back on in about 2 to 3 weeks if you have time. I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Cooley for always putting together a great show. And I always like to thank our viewers and our listeners for taking time to listen to the James Cooley Show. Remember, always dream big, think big, and be big. We'll be back next week at the same time, all next week. It's your life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley.